Hey guys, it's me, and today I'm talking about Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, the first book in the Last Hours trilogy. This will be a reading vlog, but this first section will be a spoiler-free like kind of review, and then the rest of it will be like a discussion of what happened in this book and my thoughts on it and my theories about reading. So I'll give you a warning when we go into spoilers, but for now, you're safe. Except if you've not read The Infernal Rises, this book is very much tied into The Infernal Rises as we follow the children from the characters of that series. So I don't know how to talk about this book at all without spoiling that trilogy. So if you haven't read The Infernal Rises yet, leave the video now, and yeah. But for the rest, I won't be spoiling any other Shadowhunter books at all. So people who haven't read The Infernal Rises yet left, I can talk to you what this book is about. This book follows the children of our characters from The Infernal Rises. Mainly it follows James Harrendale and Cordelia Carstairs. We start off this book with a lot of new things happening in London. Basically the past couple of years in London, it's kind of been quiet. Not a lot of demon attacks have been happening, and the Shadowhunters do things it's sus, because why wouldn't you? But they're kind of like, what? It's not harming us at all, because, you know, no demons are showing up, so what will harm us? So let it be. Except one day when our main characters, like James and his friends, are on patrol, they come across a demon. And after that, a lot of demon attacks start happening again. Also, with this initial demon attack, James slips into the Shadow Realm, because if you don't remember, Tessa is a warlock, so her father was a demon. And therefore, James, being the son of Tessa, has like special powers, and part of that is slipping into like the Shadow Realm, and he has been trying to get it under control with Jem. Basically, he's been training with Jem to get it under control, and he hasn't slipped into the Shadow Realm in about a year again. But now that this demon attack has happened, this first demon attack has happened, he's slipping back into the Shadow Realm more and more often. And then also, new things. Cordelia Carstairs is coming to London. Cordelia Carstairs is parabatai to be with Lucy Harrendale, which is James's sister, and that's why she's coming to London officially, but there's more to why the Carstairs are coming to London. And then also at the same time, Grace and Tatiana Blackthorne are also coming to London. Tatiana is the sister of Gideon and Gabriel Lightwood, and then Grace is Tatiana's adopted daughter, and they are coming to London after just living in seclusion in Idris. They're coming to London all of a sudden, and we learn that James actually has a pretty tight connection to Grace that nobody knew about. A lot of things happen with romance and friendship and demons, and I ended up giving this book 4 to 5 stars. It definitely isn't my favorite Shadowhunter novel, but I had a grand old time reading this book, and I was kind of scared of it because I wasn't the biggest fan of The Infernal Rises, and as this follows the children of these characters, I was just scared that I also wouldn't like it. I really liked the cast of characters in this book. I really liked the dynamics between them, and we have a pretty big group of characters. Like I made a family tree, which I'm not going to show too much of because it does have spoiler for the series on there. But I made a family tree. They were able to see like everyone's connections better, because in the beginning it was kind of confusing as who's related to who and who's the kid of who, because that was just something I was interested in. It's not necessarily relevant to the plot, but relevant to me. I really wanted to know like who's related to who from The Infernal Rises. I made that family tree because we have a pretty big cast of characters, and I wanted to know what's going on and make it clear. And I also on the back have like a list of parabatai and couples. I really liked the dynamics in each of the characters. All of them had like different dynamics between them. It was very fun to like see them bounce off each other because they're all very, very different people. And I liked it a lot. My favorite character is Matthew Fairchild, which if you know my thoughts on The Infernal Rises, you should know why, because Henry Brenwell is a cinnamon roll that I love so much, and Matthew Fairchild is his son. And not to say that all the children of Henry are my favorite, because I hate Charles with a living passion, but Matthew is amazing. He stole my heart and like the first time he showed up, and I already met him through short stories, and I already knew I was gonna love him, but like short stories are a little bit different from the main novel, so I was a little bit cautious going into this, but I immediately fell in love again with Matthew. He's just he reminds me a lot of Magnus, which is my favorite Shadowhunter character, but Matthew is very much his own person, but like both Magnus and Matthew are like very extravagant, and I really like that. So now my favorite shadow in this list goes Magnus, I hate to say this, Matthew, and then Henry. I feel like I'm betraying Henry, but like I love Matthew so much. And then I also really like Anna Lightwood, who is Thomas's sister, I believe. Oh no, it's Christopher's sister. Wow, I'm dumb. Yeah, Anna is Christopher's sister, daughter of Gabriel and Cicely, if you remember the Infernal Devices well enough. And I also really liked her. She plays a very minor part in this book and very much like stays on the background, but I really liked the parts that we got to see of her, and I'm really excited to learn more about her in future books. But like for the rest, I didn't really care about like the individual characters. I really liked seeing them like play off each other and like be friends. I really liked that a lot. But those are like the only two characters like individually I really cared about and I would die for. Besides that, I also really liked the plot. It was nothing besides like one very small thing really caught me off guard and had me like shook, but I had so much fun with the plot and I theorized a lot throughout this novel, which you'll notice soon if you've already read this book and you're going into the spoilery section. Like you'll notice that my theory brain was working overload reading this book, and I had so much fun doing that, and I haven't been able to do that with a book in so long, and this I just had so much fun doing that with this book, and there was so many things going on, and everything was balanced very well, but there were so many things going on that I just had fun putting pieces together, and I really just had a great time reading this book. There are also some romances in here that I really felt for. I have a couple of ships in this book that I would die for. I mean that I would die for because I don't think the relationships I'm invested in are developed that far yet, but I definitely am just like, if they don't happen, I'm gonna sue. So I do think there's some great representation in this, and what I really like about Cassandra Clare's books when it comes to representations, all feels natural to me. It doesn't really feel like pushed in. And I also really like, because we have queer characters in this book, I also really like the discussion around queerness during this time period, because we didn't really have that in the Infernal Devices. The Infernal Devices is very bland. There was one Asian character in it, and then for the rest I think everyone is white and straight, which is fine, but I like seeing a more diverse cast, which definitely this book had, and especially because it is in a historical time period, I like seeing how the world interacts with these diversities, because fun fact, queer people and people of color have existed all throughout history, and you can't just erase them from it because you find it more convenient to write about white people. I would say if you like Shadow in the World, pick this up because it's a lot of fun. If you had troubles with Infernal Devices just like I did, pick this up because this is so much more fun, and I really like this cast of characters also a lot more, and I don't know, I had so much fun reading this book, while my problem with Infernal Devices is that I felt like dragged out a lot and was a bit boring, but this I had so much fun with. And yeah, just go into the spoilery thoughts because otherwise I'm just gonna say yeah. So yeah, if you haven't read this book yet, now is your time to leave because I'm going into spoilers. But I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. How's you doing? I finished the first quarter of Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare last night, and I thought I'd talk to you about what happened, my thoughts on what happened, theories, because I have some. I took extensive notes on my laptop, just meaning I did like an outline of what happened and some quotes and just stuff that stood out to me, and I'm gonna go over all of that. Let's just get started about what happened. We start the book off with a flashback to Lucy when she's 10 years old and Idris, and she's like lost in the woods, falls into a fairy trap, and a boy helps her out of it, brings her back home, and she just assumes that he is a changeling because he knows a lot about fairy stuff, and he doesn't really say much about himself. So that's her assumption. And then we flash forward 6 years, and the first scene we see is James and the boys. I mean, constantly gonna call them the boys, but if I'm referring to like the boys, it's James, Christopher, Matthew, and Thomas. Those are the boys. Except in this case, the boys are that, but then minus James, because I already said James. They're battling demons, and they mentioned that like demons haven't really been a thing recently. They haven't really needed to fight ones. It's been about a year since they last came across a demon. This is very special. It is. They do recognize that it's odd that they haven't come across a demon in that long, but oh well. Also, at the same time, in that battle, James goes into the Shadow Realm, And that's also a thing that hasn't happened in about a year. And he says he thought that it was because he got it under control, as he's been taking lessons with Shem to get things under control, and just thought it was all under control, and that's why he hasn't stepped into the Shadow Realm yet. Turns out not the case. Also, by the way, I definitely think that the demon attacks are attached to James disappearing like the Shadow Realm, because it isn't a coincidence that demons haven't showed up in London for about a year, and James hasn't gone to the Shadow Realm for about a year. And on the same night, there was a demon attack, and James slips into the Shadow Realm. Then, after the battle, when the boys are patching each other up, we learn that Tatiana and Grace Blackthorn, who, Tatiana is the aunt of both Thomas and Christopher, and then Grace is their cousin, obviously. They are coming to London. They have lived a very sheltered life in Idris and not really had contact with the outside world, but now they've decided to come to London. And also, we learn from James's inner monologue that he and Grace actually really close. They met in Idris because their houses are next to each other, and they even are romantically involved. Nobody knows about it. Then we switch perspectives to Cordelia, which just arrived in London. Officially, their reason is so Cordelia and Lucy Herondale can have their herbicide training, but there is an ulterior motive, as Cordelia's father is under investigation of the Clave because of a mission that he had to do that went wrong. And basically what Cordelia is saying is that the father had no control over anything, but the Clave wants someone to blame, so they're blaming his father, and he is going to trial. But before that happens, the family wants to have allies, powerful allies, because they've always kind of been traveling around a lot and not really living in one space. They haven't really been able to make friends or allies, and that's why they're officially in London. And also Cordelia reveals that her mother kind of has a plan of marrying Cordelia off. Now we also learn that Cordelia has a huge crush on James, and there is a ball that is thrown in honor of the Carstairs moving to London, and at this ball James and Cordelia end up dancing together, and James ends up leaving Cordelia immediately once the Blackthorn family comes in. Matthew eventually stands in for James, and Cordelia and Matthew have a great conversation, which just shows how much I'm meant to love Matthew. And then James and Grace end up dancing together the side of room, and here I have two quotes that just raise some questions in my head. I'll read them off for you. When we are not together, when we are not with one another, the bond between us weakens. And that's something Grace said. And then we have, she slid her hand down his arm. He felt her fingers circle his wrist. Below the silver bracelet, loyalty binds me. This makes me suspicious, and I'll tell you why at the end of this. Because there's more, it's a theory I have, and there's more puzzles to it that are coming. And then we switch to Lucy, who, with the Blackthorns, with Tatiana and Grace, there was a little boy. Not a little boy, there was a boy. And only Lucy was able to see him, and she recognizes him immediately as the boy from 6 years ago when she was 10 years old in a dress, which I talked about very briefly in the beginning. Turns out that the boy is Jesse Blackthorn, who is actually dead, and he's Tatiana's son, but he's dead. So he's a ghost, and he's only visible to small children and Tatiana and Grace, because those two people saw him die, and it's very unusual for Lucy to still be able to see him. And then he says this: think of me as on the threshold of a door. I'm unable to take a step outside the door, and I know I can never be allowed back in to live again, but the door is not closed behind me. And then that section ends up with Jesse saying there is death here and disappearing. And then we switch back to either Cordelia or James, I'm not sure, but we basically switch back to the main party where Barbara Lightwood has just collapsed, and she just blames on the fact that she hasn't really eaten in a while. But the thing that's strange about it is that James, right before this happened, slipped into the Shadow Realm, and in the Shadow Realm he had a vision of Barbara being pulled down into the shadows, and right when he came back, Barbara had actually also collapsed. And he thought it's weird because his vision in the Shadow World is never really connected with the real world. And then there's also been a demon attack on Mundanes, which is strange. You go and fix that, and then don't really mention it again. Then we have a flashback to the Herondales going to visit the Carstairs, and James having the scalding fever. And the scalding fever is a disease that's only affects Shadowhunters, and you get immune to it once you've had it, so you can only have it once. So that leaves only Cordelia and her mother and then the servants to still be able to be in the house, because all the rest hasn't had it yet, so they could be infected, so they leave. And yeah, Cordelia ends up taking care of James a lot. Then we go back to modern day, not modern day, present day, where we're in the park and Cordelia takes James aside for an apology for ditching her, and then he ditches her again for Grace. Then Grace gets upset at James for her talking to Cordelia, and he says that he barely knows her and is basically only really friends with her because that's the Heavendale Carstairs stuff. And also that Cordelia saved Lucy's life at a certain point, and they're soon to be parabatised, and that's really the only connection he has to Cordelia. Barely knows her. And the scene that stood out to me here is this: do you remember when you told me all about Cordelia that summer after you had the scalding fever? He shook his head, puzzled. He remembered the fever, of course, and Cordelia's voice through the dizziness. She had been kind to him, though he did not recall telling Grace about it. No, he said, not specifically, but I have always told you everything, so it would hardly be surprising. Not just that you were with her when you were ill, Grace said, but about her, about Cordelia. Then Grace says, no, I don't. I barely think of her at all. And then there's a demon attack, and kind of in the midst of that, Barbara approaches James about her fainting the day before, and she says this: I saw shapes, ragged black shapes, and I saw something get hold of me and drag me down. Which matches the vision that James had when it happened. So yeah, there's a demon attack. Pierce, Wentworth, Barbara, Lightwood, and Ariadne, who is Charles' fiance, are heavily injured. Everything about the attack is unusual. It happens in daylight. It's very focused on just shadow hunters. None of the mundanes in the park get hurt, and the wounds are not healed by Watsies, and so they get in the help of the silent brothers, and they don't even recognize the wounds and have struggles figuring out what it is. And to learn more about these demons, the Herondales have plans. James wants to go into the Shadow Realm on purpose, and then you also see Lucy leaving off to the Blackthorn's house because she thinks Jesse might know more about it all, as he did say there's death here right before Barbara collapsed the day before, and she convinces Cordelia to go, just saying something of oh, the Institute's ghost Jasmine told me that there's a certain ghost there that knows more about it, and I want to help out. And then we leave off the first quarter with a flashback again, and this is why I specifically quoted that thing about Grace asking James about Cordelia, because this is where things get suspicious. So, in the flashback, we are immediately after James has gotten over the fever, and the Herondales go to their house in Idris, like they do every summer, and James is constantly thinking of Cordelia, even to a certain point while talking to Grace. Grace tells him, you won't love her, be honest with yourself. And Grace in this time, Grace also tells James about this silver bracelet that it's the only thing she still has from her biological parents, as Grace is adopted by Tatjana. But Tatjana keeps it and locked up in this box and keeps it away and every time Grace asks about having it, Tatjana tells her that she's not old enough yet. And then Grace is also very curious about what happens to James when she's in the Shadow Realm. So James goes into the Shadow Realm on purpose for the very first time, and it's also the only time before I just talked about what's happening in present day. That's only the second time that he's done that. And he's shown Grace that he can turn to a shadow and go through walls and stuff. Grace asks him the next time that this happens to go through the walls of the house and his hand into the box and grab the bracelet and pointer. And James tells her that's what he'll do. What is suspicious? Okay, so now, probably not that big of a part of the story, but I have a lot of theories about this part, so here we go. Grace and James, as you noticed, maybe I find a lot of things suspicious about their relationship. That's why I brought up a lot of quotes to back my ass up. Basically, what I think is that Grace has some sort of enchantment on James to keep him in love, because he talks about there being a bond that weakens when they're apart, and James' reaction to that is we're in love, love doesn't fade away. So he thinks that's strange. So I think there is sort of an enchantment on him that's connected to the bracelet, because her description of the silver bracelet from her mother sounds very similar to the silver bracelet that James is wearing that was gifted to him by Grace. So obviously. Then also in the flashback after the fever, we very obviously see that James, his mind was constantly with Cordelia. And then when he talks to Grace about that part. He doesn't remember that at all. He doesn't even remember telling Grace about Cordelia anything at all, while they were constantly talking about her. And like I said, Grace literally says at a certain point, like, you're in love with Cordelia, just admit it. I think that's so strange that that's a memory he doesn't have anymore. And also just that this bracelet, I feel like there's an enchantment or like something on it. I don't know why Grace would do it. Maybe to like get out of a house. I don't know. I've not figured out the motives of Grace to do this, but I'm very certain that it happened. And we also know that Tatjana's father was very much into fucking demons because that's a big part of the film devices. And Tatjana was a huge supporter of her father no matter what, and still is. So I'm assuming that, and because they're like so reclusive, or like were so reclusive, I'm thinking maybe there might be some stuff involved therein as well. Could be. And I also don't have an explanation for Jesse yet. I think he's kind of like an in-between, like he is an in-between state. I think we got that confirmed, that he isn't just like a normal ghost, but I feel like there's something like special about him. And maybe that could also slide in as towards why Grace has like magic or like some, I don't know. But that's really all I have for you right now. But yeah, I'll talk to you when I'm halfway through. Yo, I finished about a quarter of Shade of Gold by Cassandra Clare, and I'm halfway through, and I'm gonna run this book by you again like I did for quarter one. This quarter starts off with Cordelia and Lucy arriving at Blackman's house, and them splitting up. Lucy trying to sneak into the house while Cordelia is trying to distract Grace and Tatjana. Cordelia goes up to the door and wants to talk to Grace, but she's turned away very quickly, and on her way to the carriage to wait for Lucy, she hears some strange noises coming from the greenhouse, so she goes to check it out. Turns out that the greenhouse is full of plants that are used for dark magic, which they kind of brush over, but I just want to talk about because I will talk it about how I think that there's magic involved between Grace and James. And now we get the confirmation that there's magic plants in the greenhouse. Hello. Dark magic plants as well? Yeah, she gets attacked by a demon. James shows up because he went to the shadow realm, like saw this like light, walked towards it and ended up in the greenhouse, and they fight off the demons. They fight off the demon. Also want to point out a quote here that I thought was strange, raised the red flag, is when Cordelia is still at the door. As Bill said, Grace began to turn away. Cordelia reached out to catch her at her sleeve. Grace gave a low cry of pain and snatched her arm away. Which makes me think that Tatjana is a tad bit abusive. But switching back to Lucy's perspective, she is able to sneak out into the house and talk to Jesse, and then she finds out that Tatjana has, when Jesse was dying, she took the body from the clave, and instead of Jesse being like burnt and like put into like the city of bones and everything, you know how it works. Tatjana called in a warlock to cut Jesse's soul free, so that it can wander between the real world and the spirit realm, which is now another realm. We have the shadow realm and the spirit realm. It's confusing. This also makes Jesse able to see ghosts and demons, and he says that at the ball there was a sinister presence, and he assumes that it was the same presence that was at the park, which, I mean, I kind of was expecting for that to be the case because of how Barbara describes things being very similar, doing what she experienced at the ball and the attacks. So I already assumed that those were connected, and now we got basically a confirmation. After that talk, Lucy like runs out into the garden because she like sees the witch light, and then all of a sudden the witch light goes out, so she thinks something is wrong with Cordelia. She just arrives when Cordelia and James have already fought off the demon. And then also another curious quote I found is from Lucy. It says, "James used to feel pity for her," said Lucy as the carriage started to move. "Then it seems that somehow he fell in love with her, which is very odd, really. I've always thought of pity as the opposite of love. Seemed a bit sus to me." Then we see that the kill demon dropped eggs that were about to hatch, and that these again are like new demons, and they very much grow into full grown demons. They also have the memory of the past demon, which I thought was very interesting. And of course, this is like because of Benedict's weird kink that this happened. Then we get a flashback to James going into his shadow realm, going to the Blackthorn house, retrieving the bracelet. But this is what I thought was interesting. In the house, he finds an empty shell of one of Axel Mortmain's clockwork creatures. Why is that there? Like, just, I want to know. Like, when I read that line, I'm annotating my book, by the way, but I really wrote next to it, like, no, not this shit again. Because we're playing with demons. These clockwork creatures were, like, demons were put into them, so they were, like, able to fight, like, something. I don't remember that well. And I'm like, no, we're not putting demons in these things again, because I can't handle that. Basically, James wants to bring the bracelet back to Grace. Grace gives it to him, as she's afraid that when she will wear it, the Channel will notice that it's gone and take it away from her again. So James has it, and it is confirmed that it is, like, yeah, this is the same bracelet, obviously, because it was given, but we saw the description as well before that. So yay. Then back to present day. Clave used a tracking spell on James. First of all, why? Like, you're dealing with life-threatening situations with demons that you've never heard about. And what are you doing? You're tracking a 16-year-old. Like, how old is he? He's older than 16. Like a 19-year-old. You're tracking a teen. You've got better things to do with your time? Apparently not. So yeah, use the tracking thing on James, and that's how they arrive to the Blackthorns and find James, and James is able to go back home. But the Tana told the Clave that James actually just came by to see Grace, and when he was turned away, he just, in like a fit of anger, destroyed the greenhouse. Which, okay. Also, a thing that I thought was sus is that the Clave ignores the fact that there was magical plants. Like, James is talking to, like, Will and Charles, that's how we find all this out. And James brings up of, like, what about these magical plants? And Charles is literally like, because of the circumstances, we're not gonna pay attention to some plants she is growing in her bushes. And I was like, excuse me, these are plants used for dark magic, which is like, it's, first of all, from what I know from the Shadowhunter world, it's basically illegal for Shadowhunters to use magic that isn't runes. So should you do something about this? What I do think is strange is that they believe the Jonah's story, but also believe James and there being a demon there, which is like, they contradict each other, so I don't know. But yeah, they do just believe that the demon is a leftover from Benedict, and that they just looked over it after raiding the house during, like, when he died, which is actually what happened. But they don't think that Jana was aware of it, but we know from Grace that she was. James then goes to the Fairchilds, because in the Shadow Realm he was able to, like, pick up some stuff from the ground and things, and he's giving them to Henry, so he can investigate them. Grace sent a letter to James that arrived at, like, the Fairchild's home. Grace wanted them to meet up because she's quote-unquote in danger. And then the boys plan for Thomas and Christopher to work together in the lab to find an antidote, while Matthew is planned to meet with James after James has met with Grace to go to the Devil's Tavern and see if they have books there that can give more information on the demons. So they basically want to go investigate about everything that's going on, which is logical. Then Cordelia is going to Anna's. She had an invitation at the ball. Remember, got a formal invitation in the mail. Cordelia's mother requires Alistair to go with her, but Alistair just kind of drops Cordelia off and then goes and does his own thing, which I thought was a little bit strange. Like, Alistair is acting a little bit mysterious. Anna asks Cordelia's help because Anna just wants to get to the bottom of this because she doesn't really trust the Clave and what they're doing. Then Matthew shows up and they go to Malcolm Fate's house, where Hippolyta Vax is throwing a well, which is kind of a party but not really, and both of them are warlocks, in case you didn't know. Malcolm Fate, by the way, throws a lot of foreshadowing for the Dark Artifices. Yeah, they think they can find out more about the demon attacks from the warlocks, because usually the downworlders just know more about, like, the stuff that's going on. Cordelia also asks Matthew to convince his mother to use the mortal sword in her father's trial. Matthew agrees to it, and at the party a mermaid tries to poison the warlocks, and Cordelia notices this and steps in and saves the warlocks, And now they have leverage over the warlocks because they didn't want to help them at first, and then now they're like, hey, you owe us one because we just saved your life. They're like, okay, you're right, and they just say that there's been a rumor going around the downworld that there is a powerful warlock that is keeping the demons away, and they think that Ragnar Fell will know more about this because that's just his part of studies, I guess. And the Hippodia just says like, I'll contact him, he'll contact you, don't worry. While they're leaving, a fairy comes up to them and gives them half a dozen blades of fine and careful fairy workmanship, and it is a gift from Malcolm Fate, which I don't trust. Then there is just a small flashback that I just want to touch briefly upon. Is Thomas, he spends his travel year in Madrid and takes a little vacation from that in Paris because of Matthew. And there he comes across Alistair's, and they spend a lot of days together until Alistair has to leave, and there was a lot of sexual tension there. Moving on, Jesse randomly shows up into Lucy's room, and he warns Lucy that this demon has produced smaller demons with the same memory of that big demon. That these demons are there to protect the Blackthorns, and because Tatiana didn't agree to this meetup, they are probably going after Grace, and because Grace is a Blackthorn, they won't hurt her, but they will probably hurt James because he's a Herondale, and they hate Herondale. So yeah, Lucy goes to the Devil's Tavern in hope that the boys are there and that she's able to warn them. Thomas and Christopher are there, and Matthew is the only one to really know where James and Grace met up. So Thomas and Christopher know that Matthew is at Anna's, so they all go to Anna's, where they find Alistair waiting for Cordelia, and soon two of them arrive, and they go find James. Bosses allow, so they're leaving to go to James. Flashback to James's perspective, where Grace basically is just constantly pressuring James to marry her, but a mundane marriage, not a Shadowhunter marriage, because that would need Tatiana's permission, and she knows that she's never gonna get that. So she is just basically requesting them to elope and have a mundane marriage, which James doesn't want to do because he loves being a Shadowhunter, and a mundane marriage would mean is a betrayal to Shadowhunterness, I guess, and it would mean that like the wounds would get stripped away and they would be outcast from the Shadowhunter Society, and he doesn't want that because it would mean he would never see his family or friends again. And he's just like, no. And Grace just goes off, and then the demons arrive. Then we go back to the rest of the crew, where the rest of the crew arrives, the demons have already attacked, and James is already doing his best fending them off, so they jolt. And then at a certain moment, one of the demons recognizes James, and it's like, you're Herondale, like, I know your grandfather, I have loyalty to your grandfather. So James is like, yeah, if you're so loyal to my grandfather, fuck off and go back to your demon realm. They're like, okay, just don't tell anyone we were here, because if you will, we will come after your family. And they're like, okay, and that's it. And the crew, besides Cordelia and Alistair go home, and the rest goes to the institute, and Ragnar Fell just happens to be there. He gives them the contact information for Emmanuel Cast, who Ragnar believes is the warlock who is keeping these demons away. However, Ragnar makes them promise to not tell anyone but Emmanuel and stuff. And after Ragnar leaves, Tessa and Will come into the room, and they come with the bad news that Barbara has sadly passed away, which of course leaves Thomas ill this way, and his parents decide to move back to Idris and find calmness there, while Thomas moves in with Christopher and his family to be able to like help Christopher and like his lab stuff, so he can put his thoughts to other things. Then we go back to Cordelia, who, like I said, Cordelia and Alistair went home, and actually when she's supposed to sleep, a visitor comes over, and it ends up being Charles. Turns out Alistair and Charles are in love. Ooh. And they've been in love since Paris, which is sus to me because we just saw Alistair spend a shit ton of time with Thomas in Paris, which also, like I said, was some sexual tension there. Which basically they're fighting over the fact that Charles is getting married to Ariadne, and Alistair doesn't really want that to happen. And Ariadne is gay as well. We find out that there was another demon attack, and one was killed and two were wounded and poisoned, and these are names that we haven't heard before, so I'm just like not really mentioning them. Then James goes to catch up Cordelia about everything, and they meet up with the rest of the crew and they leave for Emmanuel's place. Then they find like a lot of such things, but mainly that Emmanuel is dead and a ghost. And there was a thing that was a little bit sus to me, that the appearance of him is very different than what Lucy and James are used to. And also, Lucy is the one that first sees him, and he mentions something about Lucy summoning him, which is strange, and I'll go into that later. Emmanuel does admit that he's the one who kept the demons away, who worked for that, and it was after he was outcast by the Warlock Society, basically, and he needed to make money still, so, and this was a job that got paid very well. He wasn't the one initiating it, there was a person behind it, but he couldn't tell who it was because this person was very heavily disguised. He couldn't even recognize if it was a man or woman, or if it was a young person or older person. However, there was a person who killed him, obviously. It was very brutal, and Emmanuel says that they're a very powerful person, and that they are now in control of the demons, not the person that paid him off anymore. Or maybe the same person, we don't know. Emmanuel doesn't feel comfortable going into depth of his death, so Lucy thinks Jesse might know more about that. So that's where we left off. Alistair is acting sus, and you can write it up to him just being gay and hiding, but I don't know. I think he's hiding something besides the sexuality, obviously. And then I think Lucy also has like a demon-y power. Like James is able to go into the shadow realm. I think that Lucy has a power that's similar. No, not similar, but like also has a power. Just assume that she didn't have powers because she's able to see ghosts, which is a Herondale power. I don't know how, but for some reason all Herondales are capable of seeing ghosts. So I think her power is also attached to seeing ghosts and like being able to interact with ghosts, manipulate ghosts in some way, maybe. I think Lucy has like some special power that has to do with ghosts, and they just never really noticed because a Herondale is supposed to see ghosts. And also just a small note I wanted to make is that James is afraid of ducks. We continue the legacy! The Herondales being afraid of ducks legacy, which is the best joke in the whole Shadowhunter fandom. To be fair, James was attacked by a duck. He mentions that. There's a monologue. I'll reach you later. Bye. Okay, so I just finished the third quarter of Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. And I'm not in a fancy setup right now. You're on my laptop. I finished the third quarter, which means next time you see me, I'll have finished this beast. Let's just get talking about what happened. So let's start off with Grace bringing Tatiana to the institute because Tatiana is hurt. We don't really know what happened to her. I'm assuming it's a demon attack, but like Grace describes it as just like it happening on their front porch, or it might have been, I don't really know what it was. And Grace breaks up with James because she is getting married to Charles, which is the most came out of left field thing that happened. I forgot to mention it while talking about last quarter, but I did think there was something going on between Charles and Grace that we weren't discussing because Charles seemed to know more about Grace than expected. And so there was something sus there in my opinion, but I wasn't expecting an engagement at all because it doesn't make sense. Like the reason Charles was engaged to Ariadne is because both of them were gay, so they couldn't marry people they loved, so they want to marry each other, and also because they're both in very high positions of power, so they'd just be benefiting of each other by that marriage. But Charles literally has nothing to benefit from a marriage with Grace. Grace does. But from what I see, the only reason why Charles would marry with Grace is so that he wouldn't look gay. Grace takes away the bracelet from James, which is my hair tie, not a bracelet, but still. And this is where my theories became proven correct, even though we don't have an official confirmation, but like the way James started acting after this just says a lot, and I'm gonna talk more about that. But yeah, then James wins away off in sadness, and Matthew comes in and he talks to Grace, and it's kind of just like, this marriage is a horrible idea, like why are you doing this? Grace forces him to kiss him, and then she uses that as leverage, like if you ever do anything to interrupt my marriage, I'm gonna tell James this, and I'm gonna tell your brother this, and you're screwed. That was so interesting because how Matthew describes it is that he didn't want to, like he didn't feel anything for her, but still felt compelled to kiss her. And then when they broke apart, he described it as coming out of a dream. So there's magic involved there, I'm telling you. This is where I think my magic theory gets confirmed, because first off, what happens with Matthew is very much like, and then when there's other things around James that they keep talking about, which I'm all gonna put in here, even though like it happens later, is that Cordelia especially ends up describing James a lot as more clear, and he seems more present. Even James describes himself like that. There's a quote. He says at a certain point, "I thought I would feel incredible grief. Instead, I'm not sure what I feel. Everything is sharper and clearer. Colors and textures are different. Perhaps that is grief. Perhaps it is just that I don't know how such loss should feel." Which I think is interesting because he brings up the fact that everything feels sharper and clearer, while he's also being described by other characters as feeling more present. And James also talks about having memories of Cordelia that he didn't remember before, so he's describing them up to like dreams. He's also very attracted to Cordelia all of a sudden again, but it's obvious that he used to have feelings for Cordelia. Grace spelled him, made him forget, or I don't know, and now they're coming back to Cordelia, and he describes them as just like a feeling that he's never had with Grace, which I think was interesting. That whole makeout scene was interesting, which I'll talk about more. He just says this at a certain point. "I wonder sometimes if it was a dream. I idealized her, I suppose, as children do. Perhaps it was a child's dream of what love should and must be. I believed love was pain, and when I bled for her." And we get a dream sequence, which I don't really know what it means, but I noted it down because usually dream sequences mean something in books. So, in a dream, James gets attacked by a demon, and the demon is like on his back, and Cordelia cuts through the demon with katana to kill him, but it ends up leaving like a huge scar on James, or like injures James in a very badly way as well, and he ends up seeing like these symbols that he recognizes from in Emmanuel's apartment, and he wakes up. We learn the Enclave moved the injured to the Silent City, which I'll talk about more why later, and Charlotte wrote a letter back to Cordelia, even though like it was addressed towards Lucy, but like was for Cordelia, and it literally says that Cordelia's father's trial has been delayed because of the demon issues they've been dealing with, so it makes sense. And the reason why Charlotte had to respond is because Cordelia asked Matthew to ask about the usage of the mortal sword in her father's trial. And this is what Charlotte has to say about it. Not exact quotes, my wording, is that they've tried using the mortal sword on her father, but that it was useless as he didn't remember anything that happened, which is sus, but we'll talk about it later. Then we have a whole discovery sequence because Thomas and Christopher discovered some things on like the shards that they found in Emmanuel's apartment, and they discover that the demon they're looking for is a manticore, which is a demon that can only be locked up in a Pixis. I don't know if I pronounced that right, I'm so sorry, but it can be killed because it constantly splits up into like smaller demons, which are called Koa. And yeah, the Pixis is like a box, where a magical box that can entrap demons, and this plays a big part in the infernal devices. Well, this manticore is captured, all the Koas also disappear. Manticores are also known to be like in between here and there, or like something like that, so they assume the manticore is hiding on the Tower Bridge because that's what James has seen in his visions of the Shadow Realm. Cordelia remembers seeing Evixis at Hepatitis Vex place. Her name is so hard to pronounce, I'm so sorry. And yeah, so they make a plan of going to the Tower Bridge with the Spixes that they are stealing from Hepatitis Vex to unlock the manticore in it, and everything's fixed because life's easy. They convince Anna to go with them as she can seduce Hepatitis and be able to steal the box. I'm gonna refer to it as a box for now because who knows how to pronounce Pixis? I don't. So Anna, James, Cordelia, and Matthew go to the next party Hepatitis throws. James, Cordelia, and Matthew distract like all the party goers while Anna seduces Hepatitis and steals the box. By the way, in between them going to the party and having this discovery, Cordelia goes back home and goes to talk to Alistair about Charles' new engagement. Turns out Alistair already knew, and Cordelia also tells Alistair what she overheard about them being gay, and Alistair gets like very angry at her for like no reason. At Anna's apartment, they also learn that there's like a meeting of the Clave going on at the Institute the same night the party is happening. So Lucy, Thomas, and Christopher decide to spy on that meeting to know what's going on. And they mention that Barbara, who is Thomas's sister and died of these demon attacks, bit her fiance right before she died and gave up like the illness, let me say that way, to her fiance, and he went to his family in New York to like grieve and everything, and then whilst there they discovered that he also had the illness. So now York and London are put into You would think I would be able to pronounce something that's currently going on. I don't. So both York and London are put under quarantine by the Shadowhunters. That's also why they brought everyone to the Silent City and they weren't allowed visitors, because that way they're keeping these people that already have it contained. Also learned it have been 6, I believe, demon attacks, so we've only learned about 3 in the past. I don't know why this is, I don't know why, but there have been way more than we learned about. Why did they hide this? I know that it was to, like, you know, control like the panic and everything, but like, is that like necessary information? So now Charles will be acting as a consul in London because Charlotte is stuck in Idris, which bullshit. Like, the position of consul isn't put down upon generations, so I don't know why all of a sudden Charles is like, this is how it will be working from now on. I don't like Charles in case it wasn't obvious. Back to Epithea's body where Charles all of a sudden shows up. So Matthew, this is also before Anna comes out of Epithea's chamber, so we don't know that the box is already stolen, even though I already told you that. But Matthew forces Cordelia and James to hide because he knows that Charles will be like very mad to see both of them there, but that he's used this kind of behavior from Matthew. They hide and they make out a lot. And then of course Matthew walks in, Magnus style, and yeah, it turns out Charles was there to question Nine Wallers to see if they knew more about the demon attacks, which main cast already had that idea like how long ago. They have the pixies. I think this is the next day. They researching the pixies and they're planning their capture of the Manticore when they discover that there's a ghost in the box already, which is an issue because one demon per box. So they go to the sanctuary to get the demon out because they think if something goes wrong in a sanctuary, the demon will be stuck, he won't be able to get out, so we can call help in case anything goes wrong. So they get it out. The demon says some words and James just kills it, which wasn't their plan, but he did it anyway. Now Magnus walks in on them, which they kept talking about how Magnus just like wasn't in their lives anymore, and I was just like, oh my god, does this mean that this will be the first time I see in which Magnus is not gonna show up? But then he did, and it was epic because Matthew kept fangirling over him, which is everything. I love that scene so much. He convinced Magnus not to tell anyone, which he agrees to because of Ragnar, and also to help them disguise the witch, the Arrow Witch, so that they can catch the Manticore and like the mundanes don't notice. They try, and at first they seem to succeed, but the Manticore actually blows out of the box, which isn't how it's supposed to work, and it destroys the box. So yeah, and while trying to fight the Manticore off the second time, Cordelia gets thrown into the river, which I don't remember how that happened really. Fight sequences happen so quick in my brain that I'm just like, I don't remember the details. But like, she ends up in the river. Manticore says some stuff to James and then like it vanishes, because what else do you do? She summons Ghost to save Cordelia from the river, but she thinks Jesse was the one responsible for this as he was at the scene as well. And I called it. Yes, I did. And then we get a flashback of Cordelia and Alistair fighting for Cortana, who gets to have it, and then the sword chooses the Shadowhunter, like very Harry Potter-esque, and Cordelia ends up being the one who gets it, which we knew because we've seen Cordelia with Cortana. The crew gets back to the Institute. Cordelia is brought home, and Alistair confesses to Cordelia that their father was an alcoholic and that he was drunk when the whole incident happened, and that's why he can't remember anything and he can't use a mortal sword on him because he was blackout drunk. Then we go back to the scene with Lucy and Jesse, where Jesse basically tells Lucy that she was the one to compel the ghost to save Cordelia, and that he just answered to that call. He wasn't responsible for it at all. And Jesse just thinks, first he thought that Lucy being able to see him back in the day when she was 10 was just because she was a child or like something, but now he's very much convinced that it's just like a special power she has, and that's why. And they're also able to touch, which he isn't able to do with his parents, with Tatiana and Grace. And Jesse has like this locket around his neck, and he tells Lucy that the locket contains his last breath, and that Tatiana hopes to use it to resurrect him one day. He actually thought that Lucy was in danger and was calling help because she was drowning from the river, and he was prepared to use his last breath to save Lucy, but that didn't end up being necessary because, you know, what's Cordelia? I think there's a romance going on between those two, and I don't know how to feel about it. Lastly, you have a flashback where Matthew is like painted this statue of Jonathan Shadowhunter, like asking for forgiveness because he confesses to murdering to someone. And I don't know how to feel about this yet. Because of a novella in Ghost of the Shadow Market, I don't know if I want to spoil that, but there's a novella in there about Matthew where I fell in love with him. And just because of what happened in there, I'm not sure if that is going to connect to what's happening here. That was a recap of the third quarter and like my thoughts and theories, which mainly my theories are theories confirmed. Good news. I finished Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, and let's just review that last quarter. We start off this quarter with Christopher, Matthew, and James talking about how Christopher only needs one more ingredient to make the antidote, and this ingredient is the most crucial one, but it's an illegal plant because it grows in the blood of mundanes, which, that's dark. James remembers seeing it in Tatjana's greenhouse, which just like, we know how gruesome it is for this plant to grow, and we're not even going to question the fact that Tatjana has them in her greenhouse. They go to leave the Fairchild's house, which is where they're at, to get the plant, and they get attacked by a demon, and Christopher gets injured in a very painful scene. We learn that Cordelia's mother is expecting a baby. Christopher is sent off to the Silent City, obviously. James receives a note from Jem to come to the Silent City. Cordelia and Matthew decide to join him, and at the Silent City, patients start chanting James's name, which is very strange, and I would find very creepy about what happened to me. Ariadne in particular is the one to say that James is like capable of ending this, that this whole thing is because of him, and he's the only person that's capable of ending it, which was strange. And quickly Jem enters the room, and he's like, what the fuck are you guys doing here? And they're like, you said this loud. And he was like, no, I didn't. They were like, fuck, and they ran because suspicious. And we also discover that James has gotten injured, that Christopher accidentally scratched him, so he's on his last life now as well. And they come across a gateway, and because James is self-destructive, he decides to go through it. So why the hell not? Turns out he comes to the Shadow Realm, and he meets his grandfather named Belial. I'm just gonna keep referring to him as James' grandfather because that name is so hard to pronounce. And basically his grandfather is a demon who is known as the thief of realms, which means he basically just like steals other demons' realms, and that's exactly what he did. He stole this realm from another demon, and now completely has it under control, and he did that so that the little breadcrumbs that he leaves will lead to that other demon, not to him. It turns out also that James' grandfather is in control of the Manticore, which I'm not that surprised by. He said that he would stop the attacks if James would merge with him, which was a bit strange. I wasn't expecting that, because this demon, before getting hellbound or like whatever, he was really close to humans, so like in punishment he is not allowed in a human realm, and it's like his own form as all the other demons are. And yeah, if he emerges with James, who is his blood relative, he is capable of doing that. But James declines because he's not dumb. When Lucy and Thomas have gone up to the Lightwood house, which is the Blackthorn house, I've been referring to it, but it's gonna get it's Cheswick Manor, but I've not referred to that as that in any of these clips, but oh well. They go there to fetch the plant, and Thomas and Lucy split up because God knows what reason, and Lucy comes across Grace, who is standing next to Jesse's coffin, and Grace gets attacked by a demon. Fun times. And a demon keeps talking about how her mother put enchantments on something, and Grace has taken it off, and she should place it back, which I'm 100% sure that this is about James. Then Lucy comes in to try and save Grace, and the demon says he knows Lucy and calls her the second one, which I'm assuming is referring to the second Terranil. Then Lucy ends up defeating the demon, and Grace learns that Lucy knows about Jessie and is able to see Jessie. So Grace tells Lucy that her mother keeps black magic stuff in Idris instead of at Cheswick Manor, because there is a portal between Cheswick Manor and their house in Idris, which I told in the first section that was sus. And Lucy gets a vision of James being in danger and asks Jessie to take her. Not really ask, he first asks, but then Jessie's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And then she's like, I command you, which power move. Then you learn that Thomas was able to retrieve the last ingredient, luckily, because otherwise that whole expedition was for nothing. and he ends up going to the Fresh House to finish the antidote because he's been working on this with Christopher like this whole time, so like he knows what to do. And Charles is just like, nah, just like, I don't care if you think this is the antidote because I am leaving and I don't want you to blow up my house. Like, no, you're not getting in. I'm just like, bitch, really? But Alistair is there with Charles, and Alistair is just like, dude, let Thomas in. Like, are you dumb? And Charles is still like, no. And then Alistair's like, I'll stay with him. And he's like, okay, I guess. Charles is a super dick in that scene. Kind of ship Alistair and Thomas. Not really, because of stuff that happened later. But before that thing had happened, which I'm going to talk about later, there's some tension there. Then we switch back to the Shadow Realm scenes stuff, and James and Matthew were like tied up between like a cord because James didn't want anyone to go into the Shadow Realm with him, but Matthew was like, I'm not, no, we're gonna put a protective, we're gonna put like a cord between us, so it's a safety measure. But like it ends up when Matthew just like slamming against the gateway constantly, so Cordelia just like, this is ridiculous, this will kill him. So like she just like cuts the cord, the rope. It's not a cord, it's a rope. I don't know why I said cord. She cuts the rope with Katana and then ends up going into the Shadow Realm because of Katana, like opening. I don't really know how it works, I'm so sorry. Then stuff happens and James ends up killing the Manticore and Cordelia ends up killing James's grandfather. They get back into the human realm and then Lucy and Jesse are there, even though nobody can see Jesse, so I don't know I mentioned that, but like they're there. James is close to death and Cordelia's leg is broken. Watsies are not working on James, so Chase gives him his last breath, which powerful moment. And Thomas and Alistair like quickly join them as well and say they finished the antidote and the Clave is on their way. The antidote ends up working and everybody is healed and saved and life is good again because the quarantine has been lifted. Then we get a flashback to Alistair having come home from his first year at the academy and Cordelia just kind of feeling ignored by him because he's ignoring her, to be really honest, and she's doing everything in her power to get everything back to normal, to get her and Alistair's relationship back to how it was before. And when they do talk again, it's kind of an argument as Cordelia's like, how dare you leave me alone, how dare you not recognize that I was lonely here and I'd rather be at the place where you are. And then Alistair's just like, well, at least you weren't bullied. And Alistair confesses that the fact that he was being bullied at the academy at first because of how they like keep traveling around and stuff like that, and he saw it as be bullied or be a bully, so he decided for the later option, which we knew. And back to present day, James is on his sick bed and a lot of people come to visit him, to congratulate him and like see how he's doing and whatever, except Cordelia hasn't, but like they think it's normal because like she just broke her leg, come on, Chelsea needs to heal, you know. Then Grace comes to visit, which is against all odds, nobody expected this, and she gives him the bracelet back. But I was not happy when this happened. I was just like, no, not again. James is madly enough with Grace again. He forgot that Grace was engaged to Charles, which I thought was interesting. And also the hot makeout scene with Cordelia, he just sees it's like, oh, we acted well, instead of him actually having very deep feelings for Cordelia. I hope we're not gonna spend the entire trilogy with this curse on him, like this enchantment on him, because I'm not ready for that. Basically, Grace tells him that the automaton, I don't know if that's how I pronounce it, but I'm pronouncing it like automaton, at the Blackthorn house in Idris is actually enchanted to kill all Shadowhunters when Tatiana dies. And Tatiana is planning on killing herself. So basically she asks James to destroy the automaton so can go kill Shadowhunters. I don't know how to feel about Grace. Like, she does some sketchy stuff, but also I feel like she's trying to fight against it and do right, but like she's entrapped by what her mother wants, so I don't really know how to feel about her. Cordelia and Matthew end up walking in on them. Cordelia is heartbroken, obviously, because she thought that she and James are finally gonna get together. Apparently there's a portal at the Institute, and James uses it to go to Idris, and Matthew and Cordelia just go after him, even though like he told them not to do that, but they did. Thank God. And then James ends up destroying the automaton. And it catches fire and burns the whole house down, which wasn't expected, but it happened. And the three of them just managed to escape just in time. And they use the portal at the manor there. There's an enclave meeting, and for the first time in forever, everyone is invited because they're basically just talking about Cordelia and James's and Christopher's like achievements, and it's kind of weird to like talk about them when they're not there. And Tatiana claims that James is the one behind the attacks that he used to help of his grandfather, who was a demon. And she also claims that she had proof that was in Blackthorn Manor, which miraculously went up in flames, and she accused James of doing so. And this was very random, but Cordelia just jumps in. It's like, he was with me in my bedroom, we were fucking. This couldn't have happened. And I was just like, you could have thought of a better alibi. That's all I'm saying. And Charlotte comes in. She's late because she had to investigate the fire that happened. They found a lot of items that are associated with necromancy and demonic magic, which are illegal for Shadowhunters to use. And then Magnus comes in, and he's like, a couple of years ago, Tatjana contacted me in the hope that I was able to resurrect her son, and came in all like these items and stuff and would help. And he was just like, no. We love him. We stan him. I love Magnus so much. Tatjana is arrested because what else did you expect? And then James ends up proposing to Cordelia because otherwise he's put into indecency and blah, 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 blah. And basically they make an arrangement for them to be married for a year, and then they can divorce for whatever reason, because divorce is more accepted than when Shadowhunted. And ugh, I hate this society. Worst thing about reading historical fiction is just that society was fucked up back then. Still is, but different. So Tatjana is given some sort of leniency as the Clave just called her crazy after her son died, and she's just like a desperate mother, and she's being sent to Adamant Citadel, which I don't know how to pronounce that right, but it's like the place where the Iron Sisters live. And then Cordelia's father is also being released, and Lucy goes to Jesse's grave in the City of Bones and promises him to help him out. And then later there's also a scene with Grace, which I didn't note down, where she tells Grace like, I'll do anything to help him, no matter if he wants me to or not. And then Grace like, we're gonna work together. And Alistair wakes up with Charles in one of the best scenes in the world, I have to be honest. And Ariadne wants to get back together with Anna. I don't know why I said Anna, it's Anna. I don't know. Then comes the most heartbreaking scene in this book, and I didn't want to read it, but I did, and I hate it. Like, Matthew has held a very big grudge against Alistair, and throughout the entire book he doesn't want to tell anyone. Apparently it is so terrible that it will put him in such disgraces. And I tried the entire time, just completely forgot about it. This is another thing we figure out in one of the novellas, and I don't remember which ones, I'm not telling you. But I completely forgot about it. And then like the first sentence was, I was like, no, not this again. But basically, there was a rumor going around the academy. Part of the rumor is that Gideon and Charlotte were having an affair because Charlotte wants children and Henry can't father children, and Gideon thinks Sophie is so ugly that she's just he's justified, which this is so dumb. And yeah, they cheated on one another apparently, and Matthew was a result of that. Worst rumor in the entire world. But basically Alistair was one of the bigger spreaders of this rumor. He wasn't the one who originated this, but he was one that very much perpetuated it. And he's been trying to shelter Thomas from this rumor, but he failed. Thomas knew about it, and actually his whole family knew about it, and it really hurt all of them. His sisters, his mother, his father, like all of them were so hurt by it. Now Thomas just went off on Alistair like, oh, that was such a heartbreaking scene, but like so righteous. Like, moving on to another sad moment, which I wasn't too happy with, but oh well. But all of this is happening at the engagement party between Cordelia and James. And at a certain moment, James and Cordelia are dancing, and Matthew's like sulking off in the side, and Magnus goes up to him because he's like, I don't like saving people like Matthew, but like I can't help myself, so here we go again, and it's the best thing ever. And Matthew reveals that he's actually in love with Cordelia, which, like, I saw it coming, but I don't wanted it to happen. I think their interactions are really cute, but I really wanted them to stay friends. I thought that was the best way to go about this. I also want Matthew to end up with a guy. Yeah, basically he also reveals to Magnus that this engagement, this marriage is not real. Magnus just decides to stay longer in London because of this, because he's just like, then we have an epilogue, in which we find out that Tatjana has been working with James's grandfather, which I was not surprised. Basically, he isn't completely gone. Well, he was like killed in the Shadow Realm. They suspected he would be gone for like around a century because Cortana puts in like a very heavy wound. He has an anchor in the human realm, which is obviously Tatjana, let's be honest. So he's a little bit weaker, but like he's back basically. And Tatjana thinks their entire plan is kind of like ruined because of her getting arrested, But Belial, which seems his grandfather, I don't know exactly what his plan is, but he said that he wants to attack the Shadowhunters Radio Week, which is at the Cell place. And the only way to do that is to get into the Adamant Citadel, which is impossible to break into, but Lajana is going to be escorted into, so she will be at the perfect place for their plan to continue, which just makes me sus. That was this book. It was a wild ride. I don't know what's gonna happen next. I generally can imagine. The only thing I know for certain is Lucy is gonna do something with Jesse. Magnus is gonna be very involved with Maggie, which I'm very excited for. And I don't want to see James and Cordelia together in a marriage because it's gonna hurt me because I know he won't like have his full feelings and everything, and I'm not excited for that. I'm really excited for Anna's storyline to continue with Ariadne because I think that's gonna be cute as hell. I'm expecting Alistair to make like a huge redemption, and I'm kind of excited to see that. Those were my thoughts about Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you read this book, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it, and feel free to comment all spoilery details, but I don't know if you remember because it's probably going to be a long video. In the beginning I did a non-spoilery section, and just if you want to comment anything spoilery, just leave like a spoiler warning at the top of your comments so these people from the first section know not to read your comment. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.